The last three techniques we're going to talk about is splatter. Then we're going to talk about what it looks like to use rubbing alcohol. And then the very last one, let me just move this over slightly. The very last one, we're going to do just a straight up dry brush. Okay. For the splattered area, you're going to start off, just move the camera a little bit so you can see. We're going to start off with a wet wash of any color in that space, but I would like you to pick a color that is a little on the lighter side so you have a contrast. So for me, I think I'm going to go with yellow because I haven't used yellow yet. So I'm going to start out by mixing up some yellow, making sure that it's heavily pigmented, but then also got plenty of water in it. Okay, and I'm only going to paint half of this with my yellow wash. Okay. The next step is to take that piece of copy paper, and I'm just going to rip mine in half, and I'm going to mask this section to keep from getting this all over the place. All I'm going to do is take a brush with pigment and water. I'm going to pick a dark color like a purple. Okay, pigment and water, and I am just going to splatter paint in the area that has no paint and in the area that does have paint. And you can see really fast what happens if it's an area that is still wet and those splatters end up. It starts to do the blooming, but also if the area is dry, you'll get a nice effect. This is a good one if you're trying to do like spots on the water or areas that might have, you know, like some kind of light hitting it, or if you're doing a night sky. Okay, the rubbing alcohol technique is done on a section of paint that is damp, not wet. So I'm going to start out with some pigmented paint that has some water in it. And I'm going to mix up a good amount of it just because I want it to be really dark. So go ahead and put a wash of color in that space. And we're going to let that dry a little bit, and we're going to work on the dry brush area while we're waiting. So I'm going to start out in the dry brush area by drying my brush off a little bit to get some of the water off. I'm going to grab some pigment from any space, it doesn't matter which color, and I'm not going to do anything to the section that I'm going to paint in. I'm just going to start swiping paint over that area. And you can see the texture that is created from a dry brush effect. This might be nice if you're trying to do like the side of a mountain or some rocks. But dry brush can be nice just for adding a hint of color, a breath of color, but it is basically a dry on dry technique. There's not a lot of water in my brush. I just went straight pigment. There's nothing on the paper to start with. So if I'm putting that over top of another color, I want to make sure that color's dry first. Okay. For the rubbing alcohol section, I'm going to do this while this is still kind of damp. I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol, and I can either go straight out of the bottle or I can pour it into something to start. And I can do this in a couple of different ways. I can use a clean brush and pretend that it's water and just drip rubbing alcohol onto the space. It seems to work best if the paper is still slightly wet. you can kind of see the difference between this area being slightly wet, you get the spot of rubbing alcohol, and then you get this white halo effect around it. You can use rubbing alcohol to do like a night sky situation, but it has to be done when it's still a little shiny wet. This dried a little too quickly on us, so it's not giving us the effect that we get like we're getting there. But that's basically how that one is finished, how that one's done. Okay, so we're not doing the 16th technique. That one I'm intentionally left empty so that you can write your name in that space. Once you're finished with all 15 techniques and your name is written in the bottom right-hand corner, you may remove all of the tape, and I would do it in an angle. What I mean by ripping it off at an angle is you're gonna hold it so it makes a 90 degree, and you're gonna pull it like that all the way through so that it doesn't rip your paper. And then you're just gonna hand this in to me for a graded assignment.